everyone, it's Sheri here and welcome back to my channel. So in this quick tutorial I'm going to talk to you about resin and how to sand it. So there's two different ways that I do sand my resin and I'm going to go over those. So I've got some resin paperweights here that I've cast, and obviously they've been in the mold, so there'll always be one bad side, and I just need to give these a sand back so that way they are ready to give to my client. The few items that you're going to need when you are sanding your resin is one, a respirator, because resin dust is toxic and you do not want to be breathing it in. You can use an electric sander like this one that I have. Goggles, because obviously we do not want resin dust in our eyes. And different grades of sandpaper. You will also need some water if you decide to go for option 2 with your sanding. Today I'm sanding back a paperweight that I'm making for one of my brides out of her bridal bouquet. Your first option is to use an electric sander like this one that I have, which is a handheld one. And you can use this, but make sure if you do this method, you definitely need to have a respirator and goggles on, because the dust will fly everywhere and it isn't safe to breathe in, and obviously no one wants to get dust in their eyes. Option 2 is sanding it by hand if you do not have an electric sander. Now I've got 5 different pieces of sandpaper at all different grades, and I think the first one I'm starting off with is at the 80 grit grade. And you want to work your way from a really rough sandpaper down to a really smooth sandpaper. This is also a very affordable option, as I think these sheets were just like 30 cents each from Bunnings, so it's very affordable, and I am literally working my way through it from really rough to really smooth. Be prepared when you do pick option 2 that it will take a bit of muscle power and a bit of time. So generally I normally start off with electric sander and get any of the really big rough edges or anything I need to get off with that, and then I'll switch over to sanding it by hand in a really fine grit sandpaper just to do the more detailed work. But if you don't, I'm going to show you how you can without using an electric sander. So all I'm doing is wetting my item that I'm sanding. So this is a resin cubed paperweight, and I'm starting off with my biggest grit sandpaper and I'm wetting it at the same time. This will help stop resin dust from flying in the air, and this is also a wet to dry sandpaper. So if you do not have a full respirator face mask, I do recommend still wearing a disposable one even if you are doing this method, because you just don't want to be breathing in any of the resin dust, even though this method does help keep the resin dust to a minimum. The reason why we're working from a really rough grit sandpaper down to really smooth is because the rough grit is going to get off any of your sharper edges a lot faster than a smooth sandpaper would, but it will also leave lots of sand marks in it. So that's why we're going to start off with that and slowly work our way down through the 5 different grits of sandpaper. So I've just sped this up for everyone because I think sanding resin is probably just as boring as watching paint dry. But I am working through my different strengths of my sandpaper and making sure that I'm always double checking it, and I tend to switch hands and move it around just so I'm not putting too much pressure on one side of the cube and sanding it unevenly. And I'm always wetting it in between and just double checking it. But as I sand it down, I can see that the sand marks are getting less and less, and I'm getting more of a professional finish to my cube. I also just wanted to let everyone know that I do have an Amazon store, so if you ever want to find any of the products that I use, I generally have pretty much all of them listed on my store, and I'll have the link below. Please go and check it out, and don't forget to follow me on my other social medias, as I love to post different things throughout, and I always have a good few tips and tricks on my Instagram as well. I'm pretty happy with how my cube has sanded. If I wanted to, I could leave it like this because it will be the bottom of the cube, but I do like to coat it with just a really thin layer of resin. So I'm just applying my resin with a Q-tip. You can also use a paintbrush, but make sure you do clean the residue out of the paintbrush because otherwise it will harden. And I just apply that all over. This is a very thin coat. All it's going to do is just gloss up that buff matte surface just so it looks the same as all the other sides. Don't do a heavy coat with this because you don't want it to drip over the edge, because then you'll have to go back through the process and sand off that drip. So it's a super thin coat, and then all I do is with my gloved hand, I generally love to rub it across just to make sure it's really worked into any of those minute little sanding areas. And I leave it overnight just to sort of set, and it hardens really perfectly, and you cannot even tell which area was the sanded side. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial on how to sand resin. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, as it really does help me out and lets me know to create more content like this. And if you're new to my channel, please do subscribe, as I love to keep posting more resin art tips and tricks. Thank you.